Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and as you can see, I'm in a brand new kitchen in a brand new country, so lots have changed in the last few months, hence why I've been a little bit absent on YouTube. So apologies, but don't worry, I am back. I will give you a kitchen tour of my new kitchen, which you can see behind me soon, so stay tuned, and lots of tutorials are on the way, I promise. But this week is something special. My birthday is in a few days, so I thought I would try a new technique that I saw. I saw this technique a few weeks ago on Instagram, and because it's my birthday, I thought, why not try it out? It's going to be a marble technique. Now, marbling with buttercream is usually very difficult. Because you smooth the buttercream and therefore it's finished like that, it's difficult to get intricate details. However, this is a really clever technique, so hopefully it will work. So as you can see, I've already got a 6-inch cake ready crumb coated. Now I've made my chocolate cake recipe and filled the layers with some chocolate ganache. Both of these recipes are on my channel. I'll put the link up here. And I'm going to go over the cake with my Swiss meringue buttercream. Lots of you actually asked me if it's okay to put buttercream over ganache, and it is. It doesn't slide off. The ganache sets really hard. So actually, when you apply the second coating, the ganache doesn't mix into the buttercream too. So it's good to start off with a solid shape. So for the marbling technique, you'll need at least 3 shades of color. So I've got some white here and 2 shades of pink. So you can see that one is significantly lighter than the other one. And this is to get some nice shading within the marbling. It is important to have the majority white because I find that when you add color and mix it in, the same if you're doing macarons or cupcake icing, for example, the colors always override the white. So I always start off with more white than color anyway. What I'm going to do is put some of the colors into the white and very gently mix it, but being careful not to mix it fully because of course we want the marble effect. So I'll just start off with a couple of spoons of the light and dark pink into the white and then really gently fold it, only a couple of times. So you can already see this marbling effect happening, and like I said, even though the majority is white, the colors really stand out. So now it's time to add this marbling effect to the cake. So the only thing about this cake is that you do apply quite a thick layer of buttercream for the outside, so just make sure that you have enough. So what I've got here is my small step palette knife, and all I'm going to do is take some of the buttercream and making sure that I've got all the colors, the white, the light pink and the dark pink, and apply it to the cake. But when I say apply it, I mean just spreading it on like this. So I've got quite a thick layer of buttercream and basically go over the cake like this the whole way. So each time I'm taking a really nice selection of all the colors. And of course, every time my palette knife is going into this bowl, it is mixing a little bit more. I want to avoid mixing it because I want to maintain this marbled effect. Now, of course, I've gone for pink. Look, it's my birthday cake essentially, so I'm allowed to choose pink. It is kind of my go-to color, especially with cakes, but you can use any color. I think with a lighter color such as yellow or peach, it may be a little bit more subtle, but stronger colors like pinks, blues, if you've got a deep purple, that will look beautiful. So you can already see that I've put a significant amount of buttercream on, a lot more than I usually would for the second layer, but again, this is how you create this marble effect. So I'm now going to go up the sides of the cake. I always start at the bottom to make sure that the bottom corners are really filled in because it's very easy to forget about them. So for the top, I don't mind about the marbling too much because I am going to go over with other decorations. So I'll just put the leftover buttercream here and then spread it out on the top like I would do on any normal cake. And naturally, the pinks have all blended, and so it is one color of pink on the top. So I've got my scraper at the ready, but before I scrape, I'm just going to make sure that the top is nice and flat by rotating the turntable. And now I'm going to scrape the cake like normal. So I'm going to smooth out this thick layer of buttercream, but I am going to keep it thick. What I'm actually doing is pressing the very first layer of the buttercream into the cake. So you can see the outside is blending together like a normal watercolor cake would. But you'll see in a bit that we're actually going to be removing this layer and reveal the marble from underneath. So don't worry that this is all blended together. And the best part about this cake is that this bit doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to make sure that there's an even layer of buttercream around the outside, but I'm not going to worry about all these air bubbles because I'm going to be scraping off the first layer. So right now I'm just looking at the shape of the cake. Once again, don't worry about the finer details because we're going to go over this again. So I am happy with this. I'm now going to put this in the freezer for 20 minutes. So it is important to get this cake extremely cold, hence why I'm putting it in the freezer. If you have an extremely cold fridge, potentially at 0 degrees, so super cold, then you can put this in there for at least an hour, as long as the buttercream is very chilled, because otherwise the technique won't work. So the cake's been in the freezer for just less than 20 minutes. The buttercream is firm. I do think there is a fine line about leaving the buttercream in the freezer too long, so I wouldn't go more than 20 minutes, but it does depend on how cold your freezer is, of course. So what I'm going to do now sounds a bit strange, but I'm now going to scrape around the cake again and remove the first layer of buttercream, and hopefully this will eventually reveal the marble pattern underneath. So let's give it a go. I'll start off light and see what happens. I do have a bowl next to me just for all this buttercream to go into. I'm starting to see these patches of the white and the darker buttercream. So I think this is why you need a thick layer of buttercream, because you do end up scraping quite a lot off. How exciting is this? So I'm definitely starting to see this pattern coming through, not there yet, but because I'm removing that first layer, the underneath marbled effect is showing. So I do think it's working, but I am going to continue. So there's definitely a lot of marbling detail around here. There are still patches that still have this smoothed pink, so I think I'm going to work on those sections independently and see if I can get a cleaner pattern in these areas. So I think the technique is definitely working, but I can feel that the buttercream is getting a little soft, and instead of scraping it off, it's now being smooth. So I'm going to pop this back in the freezer for another 5-10 minutes to firm up and go over one extra layer. Okay, so that buttercream has firmed up again, so I'm going to scrape a little bit more. And that is working so much better. You can really see this marble pattern coming through. So, like I said, I think it's better when the buttercream is on the slightly firmer side without being too firm. And I actually think working section by section is a lot easier to control. So once I finish this section, I can move on to the next. It is quite incredible how many techniques there are playing around with the temperature of buttercream. So I'm just finishing off the very last details because now I want a clean finish. So any air bubbles or gaps, I want to make sure that they're nice and smooth. So I'm going to pop this in the freezer one last time before I do the final scraping, because once again, as I'm scraping around, it's kind of blending the pink, but I think after one more final scraping, it's going to be perfect. Right, so I'm going to go for the final scraping now. Now, I'm not sure if it's actually showing up on camera, but you may be seeing these very faint lines that are coming horizontally, and basically that is unmelted sugar in the buttercream, and the little crystals are scraping the surface of the buttercream. Now, I'm still getting used to using granulated sugar because there is no caster sugar in Israel apparently. So if you are using granulated sugar, which are basically larger sugar crystals, then you should heat the buttercream up that little bit more to about 65 degrees. And on this final coating, I want to make sure the scraper is clean every time so I don't add more colour to certain spaces, especially to cover the white. So I think I'm there. Wow, what a technique. I really like the finished outcome. You can see this beautiful marble pattern exposed underneath. So as I mentioned with these little bits of sugar crystals, I think what's happened is that they've dug into the buttercream just a little bit. And as I've been scraping round, it's then been filled in. So I do have a few streaks, but that is obviously something to build on. But as a technique, it's amazing. And just look at the finished product. So I do want to finish off this cake with a little bit of decoration, including painting around the edge with a nice gold touch. So I'm just going to put this back in the freezer to firm up for the last time and then finish it off. So just to start off the final bits, I'm going to clean the cake board just with a dry paper towel and wipe that buttercream off. And then what I've got here is a mixture of some edible gold powder and a little bit of vodka to make this gold paint. And like I've done in many of my other tutorials, I'm just going to go over the very top edge with some of the gold paint. So it is important that the buttercream is firm, otherwise you just squash into the cake with this. This has actually become one of my favorite ways to finish off a cake. Even though there's nothing more satisfying than getting a nice sharp corner in a cake, I just love this rustic look to it, especially with the addition of the gold as well. I also have some macarons and some white chocolate ruffles here, both of which, of course, you can find recipes for on my channel. And what I've done with all of that excess buttercream that I scraped off is I put it into a piping bag with a small piping tip, just for some little decorations. So of course, this technique is lengthy and you do end up with leftover buttercream, but you can reuse it, so you don't need to worry too much. So I'm just going to pipe a little bit of buttercream onto the top, and that's going to also help stick my decorations. A few macarons on the top. And maybe one below as well. And some chocolate ruffles just to finish it off. And I think that is done. So what do you think? Do you think you'll try this technique out? I think you should. You should definitely give it a go. Look how beautiful the marbling came out. And again, like I was saying, I love the rustic gold finish. You can, of course, clean off the edges and make them nice and sharp, and of course decorate it however you like. If you do try this technique out, let me know how it goes. You can always tag me on Instagram at George's Cakes. Once again, lots more tutorials on the way from my new kitchen, including a kitchen tour. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, we'll see you very soon.